have seen both your movies. They are bad. Victory is assured.
Hey guys, how are y'all doing today? Mortal Kombat. It's a remake of the 1990 film of the same name, or a second adaptation of the video game franchise. So it was produced by James Wan, who's got a pretty big name for himself in the film industry, and it was directed by Simon McQuad, who not so much. So for those of you who don't know what Mortal Kombat is, like I said, it's a very famous and successful video game franchise that first came out in the 90s. It's pretty well known for its blood, gore, and violence, as well as its infamous fatalities. So the original plot from the video games and the first movie adaptation is that there's a martial arts competition that's going to determine the fate of the world, and it draws in a diverse cast of martial artists who have unique abilities. So when it comes to this 2021 adaptation, they took some liberties with the storytelling, which there was quite the hefty roster from the original games to choose to be put into the movie. Unfortunately, it's difficult to cast that many characters in such a short amount of time, and with that said, that makes the decision to add a brand new protagonist all the more stranger. Our new lead protagonist is Cole Young, played by Louis Tan, who's found by Jax, played by Makad Brooks, because they all share a similar mark of the Mortal Kombat logo on them, because they have been chosen by fate, or the gods, or whoever, to participate in this world-saving tournament. Which is another new thing they added onto the movie, is that these insignias allow you to find sort of an inner strength, or an arcana as they put it, which would explain some of the unique supernatural abilities the characters had in the original game. So it's kind of a unique explanation for it, but we're going to get into that in just a little bit. So we have the same essential plot here. Outer World wants to take over Earth, but first they need to win 10 competitions, which are called Mortal Kombat, predetermined by the vague rules of these gods, whoever they are. And the face of the antagonist is Shang Tsung, played by Chin Han. And Cole also runs into Sonya Blade, played by Jessica McNamee, where they have to go find Lord Raiden, played by Tadanobu Asano, who is some kind of electrical god who's here to help protect the world, but at the same time, because of those vague rules, can't actually participate and help directly. Again, and along the way, they meet Liu Kang, played by Lu Di Lin, and Kung Lao, played by Max Huang, as well as Kano, played by Josh Lawson. Honestly, some of the best humor does come from this particular character. I don't know if it's the Australian accent or just this bombastic sort of bullying way, but he always delivers the best lines.
Kano wins.
And along the way too, we get much more of a backstory to the two most famous faces behind the franchise, Scorpion, played by Hiroyuki Sanada, and Sub-Zero, played by Joe Taslim. So the movie actually starts off pretty strong with some beautiful shots and a strong backstory to Scorpion. Unfortunately, the movie does kind of fall apart afterwards. Pretty much right afterwards, we get sort of an exposition dump and text, and then we meet our main character, which is fine, but then we get Sonya Blade, who does another exposition dump to the audience. So unfortunately, the movie starts off pretty promising, but then it kind of gets into a point where it feels very, everything feels very tacked on. The way characters sort of appear, sometimes out of nowhere, the rules that are introduced, everything just sort of feels sort of written at the last minute. And that's one of the biggest faults of this movie is, yes, compared to the original film, the special effects are better, and some of the fighting is better, but that's about it. And this is only minor spoilers, but there's actually no tournament in this movie. Yeah, so the main idea behind Mortal Kombat is about a martial arts tournament. There is no tournament in this movie. I honestly can't wrap my head around the fact that the writers wrote out the main element of the plot in this movie. But it's obvious they're setting up a part 2, so I would imagine the competition is coming, assuming there's going to be sequels. So I mean, if I were to point out some of the good things in this movie, I would say it's some of the better special effects. We do get to see some fatalities and live action, and we also just get to see some of our favorite characters. And we also get the throwaway lines like,
Flawless victory.
yeah, it's a little cheesy, but I guess it's kind of cool. And the movie even teases the original theme song from the 90s movie. You know, the one where someone screams. They even make a comment about Mortal Kombat being spelled wrong.
And look, they spelled it wrong.
So there's humor throughout the movie. Not consistently, but it's there. But here's the thing. There's so many characters missing from the original games. I mean, we get a couple of references, but that just doesn't seem to be enough. We don't get a tournament to see them all fight in, and on top of that, we have a brand new character that we honestly don't feel all that attached for. And this whole subplot about being chosen by something it just seems kind of needlessly complicated. And it seems to be pointless too, because if you kill somebody who has a mark, you get the mark for yourself and therefore can learn your own superpower. Yeah, so that seems to be kind of a messy backup plan. Whatever divinity is choosing, fating all these characters to come together, I guess they're imperfect who make mistakes all the time, because that's pretty much what they set up with this subplot. I don't know, it feels completely unneeded. It could have just been written out. But there's so many other characters we could have easily included instead of this Cole Young. I mean, they mentioned Katana, they mentioned Johnny Cage, they even show reference to Nightwolf, but where's Jade, Sindel, Stryker, Quan Chi? All these characters seem kind of essential to the original plot, and I'm kind of surprised not to see any hint or hair of them anywhere. Just in all honesty though, I have to admit, I actually enjoyed the original 90s movie better. Yeah, with their lamer special effects, their irritating PG-13 rating, but the plot was much simpler and the setup was a lot more effective. You have a martial arts tournament, and it attracts the strongest warriors in the world, for one reason or another, and we get to have all the fun fights that we want from the games. But this time around, the plot is so much more complicated behind character backstories that don't necessarily really add that much. But that is a little bit of bias on my part. I guess the real question would be, if you have no knowledge of Mortal Kombat, would you enjoy this movie? My thought is most people would probably be bored. A lot of these fight scenes are not really anything new. We've seen a lot of this type of choreography, and we don't even see that many fatalities. We only really see like a handful. And ideas, rules, and characters are introduced sometimes kind of sporadically or randomly, to the point where I feel like most audiences would just feel kind of lost within the lore or mythos of this story. It's a shame really, because there was a lot of hype behind this movie, especially to amend some of the sins from the previous film, but I honestly feel like they took a couple steps forward and a bunch of steps back. It honestly kind of reminds me of that Tomb Raider remake movie. Yeah, for those who remember that came out. Yeah, I almost forgot too. But basically that film added a lot of improvements from the previous film and even had more story and more character. The problem was it wasn't as clear with its story, and it just wasn't as entertaining. It's just not as enjoyable as its previous counterpart. Let's face it, the original movie was bad, but it was entertainingly bad. It really embodies that 90s camp. And if you've seen 90s films, then you know what I mean when it embraces that 90s camp. So with that said, Mortal Kombat 2021 gets my score of 2 stars. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Have you all seen Mortal Kombat? And if not, what else have you been watching lately? Comment below, let me know, and of course stay tuned right here if you all want to see more.